The Orion Capital Systems Tower stood 40 stories of cold glass above the financial district, and on that gray Monday morning, every single hallway inside it. You and I could feel that sharp, humming tension. They were under 72 hours from sealing an $800 million Northbridge equity merger. Every choice made in the coming days would flow straight through the schedule. The inbox and the signature pad of just one woman. Being executive assistant to the chief executive officer was not just a job title. It was the ultimate gatekeeper role. Holding off 1,000 quiet ways massive deals could get twisted. 37 applicants sat in black leather chairs, dressing the part for a corporate war they felt certain they knew. Expensive tailored suits and leather folios. Flawless laminated letters of recommendation. One man quietly bragged about syncing calendars across 6 time zones for a hedge fund boss. Another applicant buried a massive media scandal for 2 whole years. They did not sound like normal applicants. They spoke like finalists in an exclusive contest for pure power. Take Zane Whitaker in the front row, crisp black suit, sharply cut navy blue tie. His shoes shined bright enough to reflect the overhead lights. He barely spoke, yet every calculated word hit exactly where he wanted. Clinton Rusk, the acting chief operating officer, walked past Zane's chair and gave his shoulder a faint, knowing tap. The 2 men shared a very telling, privileged look afterward. Serafina Vale walked in exactly at 9. Wearing a cream bodycon dress, nude heels, and a thin gold watch, her chestnut hair fell loose right over her shoulders. The room went dead silent before she even reached the long black table. At 28, she was the youngest chief executive in Orion history. Her opening sentence was incredibly short. She did not need her day to be easier, she stated. She wanted someone who made sure her mistakes never even had a chance to happen. A second later, the door swung open and Finn Mercer walked inside. He was 29 and tall. You and I recognized that tired handsomeness, a man worn down by sleeping way too little and worrying too much. His white shirt was clean and pressed perfectly, but clearly old. His navy trousers were slightly past fashionable. His brown leather shoes were worn completely soft at the toes. Tucked against his leg, half hiding behind him, stood a tiny 6-year-old girl. Her light brown hair was tied slightly crooked with a pale blue ribbon. She pressed a little white stuffed rabbit tightly right under her chin. Her name was Little Luna. The rabbit was Milo, the absolute last thing her late mother had ever placed into her tiny arms. Mocking laughter rippled through that superficial room before anyone even spoke. One smug applicant whispered that maybe the daycare was on a lower floor. Zane just smiled, arrogant and dismissive. Clinton stepped up with that fake polite smile of a man already planning how to erase an inconvenience. Is the gentleman looking for the child care wing or the hiring floor? Watch this carefully, Clinton asked, the laughter growing. Finn gently touched Luna's shoulder. I have an interview at 9:10, he said quietly. My name is Finn Mercer. Clinton quickly checked the tablet he held. Finn's name was right there, slipped in by an outside hiring agency. Clinton's face tensed up for just a split second. An unapproved candidate had slipped into a schedule he fully intended to control. Serafina observed everything from the head of the table. She didn't look for talent, she just saw a massive inconvenience. To her, a single dad bringing a kid to a crucial job interview was unacceptable. She assumed he was just a man failing to manage his personal life. And if he couldn't handle his own life, he couldn't be trusted with hers. Mr. Mercer, she said coldly, I am hiring an executive assistant. I'm simply not hiring someone who requires a babysitter. The mocking laughter swelled up in the room again. Little Luna just ducked her head, pressing her stuffed toy against her face. Finn knelt down, completely unashamed, casually tying his daughter's shoelaces like the mocking room didn't exist. You just sit near the glass, sweetheart, he whispered gently. I'll stay right where you can see me, Luna nodded bravely. Her little eyes were turning slightly red, but she refused to cry. Finn stood up, meeting Serafina's harsh gaze without flinching. I completely understand the executive role you are filling, he said. I also know your time is highly valuable. I won't waste a second. His tone didn't beg for pity, and it didn't pick a fight. It was anchored by pure, simple dignity instead of hollow pride. Serafina gave no reply. She simply signaled for the interview to start. The first round was basic introductions. 60 seconds each. The job candidates stood up in turn. One guy bragged about managing a pharma chief executive's calendar through 4 massive mergers. Another claimed they guided a startup founder through a brutal public relations crisis over one weekend. Every single presentation felt perfectly polished. You and I know that kind of flawless is completely superficial. Zane stood up near the very end. He took his time. He stated that a real assistant to a chief executive wasn't just scheduling meetings, but acting as an absolute filter of power. The one who decided what information reached the boss's desk and what problems got stopped right at the door. A brilliant leader, he said smoothly, should never have to defend her own schedule. The perfect assistant handles that before she even senses any danger. Impressed, Serafina made a tiny mark on his resume file. Clinton allowed himself a smug little smile. Now watch how real talent responds. Finn's name was called, no laptop. He didn't hide behind a slideshow presentation. Instead, he reached into his worn cloth bag and laid a single crisp sheet of white paper right on the table. His full name was printed clearly across the top. Below it sat his phone number, followed by just one single line. I don't make leaders look busier just to prove I'm doing my job. Let's watch this hiring process together. The cruel laughter returned, lower and deeply insecure. Clinton grabbed the flimsy resume, turning it slowly under the harsh corporate lighting. Is this a resume, he mocked, or a reminder someone sticks on a refrigerator? Perhaps the experience section, Zane sneered, is inside the crayon box. Little Luna heard them. She was just trying to color a tiny tree on some scrap paper by the glass wall. Her little pencil froze. She looked over at her dad with the quiet, anxious worry of a child realizing these successful adults in the room were deeply unkind people. Finn caught her worried glance. He ignored Zane completely. Have you worked as an executive assistant at the executive level? Serafina demanded coldly. I have. For whom? I cannot say publicly. I am bound by a strict non-disclosure agreement. The arrogant laughter swelled again. For these applicants who spent all morning proudly flaunting their shiny corporate credentials. To them, his unnamed background meant absolutely nothing at all. Clinton pressed harder. Convenient, he scoffed. No employer, no introduction, no public profile, and a small kid in the hallway. Mr. Mercer, tell us what exactly we are supposed to judge you on. On the actual work I do inside this room, Finn replied. The chief executive narrowed her eyes slightly. She noticed he hadn't begged at all, hadn't mentioned a deceased wife, and never pleaded for a chance. He wouldn't trade his hardship for an opportunity. Here is where you and I see her bias. She trusted the unfamiliar far less than pity. Clinton mercilessly pushed further. This corporate role demands being reachable at all hours, he declared. Middle of the night, early morning, sudden business trips. If your little girl gets sick, what happens? If the CEO demands your time exactly when your daughter needs you, what do you do? Finn glanced toward Luna. She watched him back, her small mouth pressed tightly shut. If my daughter falls ill, he stated firmly, I will ensure she is properly cared for. If the chief executive is facing a major crisis, I will make absolutely sure she is not abandoned inside it. But I will never ever call my devotion to my child a weakness. The mocking room fell dead silent. Privileged candidates looked away. Watch her reaction with me. The CEO kept a blank face, but his words pierced her guarded walls. A buried memory of a little girl waiting all alone inside a hotel lobby, while important adults murmured about not letting the child bother them. She forcefully pushed the memory away. Enough, she ordered. This next round will prove to us whether you understand this job at all. The second round was a brutal crisis scheduling exercise. Every applicant received a fake 48-hour calendar for the chief executive. 23 meetings, 6 international calls, 3 heavy legal consultations, 2 board sessions, 1 signing ceremony featuring heavy press coverage. Let's watch this corporate test. Dinner, private flights. Inside this 10-minute scenario, the simulation threw one endless shock after another. A delayed flight, a lead attorney suddenly hospitalized, a foreign partner switching their time zones, a journalist demanding a sudden interview slot, a major shareholder insisting on a private sit-down. Zane handled it all with slick corporate polish. He dragged, dropped, and color-coded every task. He even carved out 12 minutes of rest between heavy sessions so the chief executive could, like he claimed, restore her daily executive energy. But Finn never even opened a laptop. He just used paper and a tiny blue crayon borrowed from his daughter Luna's pouch. Sneers and whispers rippled through the candidates. "He's going to color the chief executive's day," someone murmured. Zane smirked, whispering that he hoped Finn wouldn't sketch a bunny in the margins. Luna heard the cruel insult and looked away. Finn ignored them, quietly marking just a few squares. During his presentation, Serafina questioned why he only flagged 5 specific schedule points. "Because these 5 items," he explained, "can rip control of the deal from your hands. The rest merely makes you feel tired." "Watch this closely." Finn laid his paper flat. "The meeting with our in-house lawyers," he said, "was pushed right after the Northbridge call. If the chief executive speaks to Northbridge before legal reviews the brand new updated annex, she risks verbally confirming a contract term she hasn't even read yet. That 12-minute schedule gap between the board session and the press call seemed like a break, but was actually the exact kind of sneaky hallway trap where a tablet is shoved at a tired leader for quick sign-off. Most disastrous corporate decisions," he said softly, "don't occur inside the formal boardroom. They happen out in the hallway when the chief executive is simply too exhausted to question things and blindly trusts whoever is standing nearby." Serafina looked deeply intrigued. Finn pointed to his third mark. A low-level investor chat was relocated from the main conference area to a much smaller side office on another floor, equipped with a totally different audio-visual system. If this were an actual working schedule, I'd be asking why the chief executive was being shifted to a less secure room on signing day. His 4th blue crayon mark. 2 global calls stacked back-to-back with no document review time, even though those parties held directly conflicting business interests. Finally, the 5th. That fancy investor dinner booked after 14 brutal hours of work. That dangerous hour where leaders agree to terms by pure reflex instead of sharp judgment. Clinton interrupted, scoffing. "You're turning a basic calendar test into a cheap conspiracy thriller." Finn completely ignored the guy. He kept his steady gaze locked right on Serafina. "True executive support isn't about making a calendar look colorful," he stated. "It's about stopping someone else from weaponizing your schedule to manipulate you into their preferred decision." You see, the human resources head nodded without realizing it. Serafina documented the complete sentence, the very first full thought she had genuinely recorded all morning. Zane noticed her sudden shift. "If every assistant treats a schedule like a battlefield," he mocked smoothly, "a chief executive will never make a decision fast enough." "Making a decision quickly," Finn replied, "is not the same thing as being backed into the only answer left." His first real victory, quiet, capable, and completely without theater. Serafina moved his single-father resume out of the reject pile and into review. Clinton watched her hand move, feeling the first cold edge of genuine concern. Clinton finally understood by then that Finn couldn't be written off just by judging his humble background. He pushed with fake authority that the next phase should absolutely be the executive service trial, testing how candidates handle a chief executive's live, chaotic personal demands. "To you and me, it sounds reasonable. Assistants normally set up boardrooms, booked rides, and screened calls. Welcomed guests managed stylists and printed papers. But Clinton warped this into a literal stage for cheap humiliation. He targeted Finn first, immediately throwing out wildly contradictory, confusing instructions. He buried vital details, inviting the entire privileged room to watch the outsider fall. 12 tasks in 7 minutes. First, order the boss's exact favorite coffee. Have the car ready downstairs. Print a 17-page corporate signing packet. Field a live call from a huge investor. Confirm a suddenly changed boardroom. Pick out a dress for the afternoon media appearance. Map out seating for 3 bitter shareholders who completely refuse to speak. Process a gift from a partner agency. Forward a sensitive legal email to the boss. Remind her to officially sign a corporate gala attendance confirmation. Dispatch a temporary security access code to a visiting VIP. Draft up a quick 5-line business deal summary. Clinton fired the tasks off quickly, almost performative. The suited candidates smirked, certain the single dad would drown. Zane crossed his arms, looking like a snob watching a lost waiter accidentally stumble into an exclusive executive boardroom. But real competence doesn't panic. He asked exactly 3 sharp questions. Who actually approved the boardroom location change? What specific device will we use to send that temporary access code? And had the partner firm's gift fully cleared standard corporate compliance? Clinton scowled. You have 7 minutes, not 7 days. Finn didn't even bother answering him. Now watch this. He ordered coffee, but held it until confirming her exact caffeine window before the big signing. He arranged transport, demanding strict background verification for the assigned driver. He began printing the document, halting at page 14 because the index pagination simply did not align correctly. He firmly rejected the partner's gift, citing active deal ethics protocol. He intentionally skipped selecting address, because true professionals know that is a personal choice for a stylist, or the boss herself, not an assistant. He absolutely refused to send a temporary security code over ordinary email. And you and I can respect this. He blocked the legal message because the recipient lacked approved confidentiality clearance. Clinton just laughed out loud this time. You have refused nearly half of your assigned tasks, he said. An assistant of mine would be terminated within the hour. Your assistant may be the one who keeps you comfortable, Finn replied. I'm trying to keep a chief executive from leaking data, breaching compliance, or signing something she should not. The human resources director checked the scoring sheet, suddenly hesitating. 5 of those 12 tasks were actually hidden compliance traps. Clinton never expected a struggling father to spot those traps. Finn caught almost every single one. Zane, feeling threatened, immediately turned personal. Of course he is careful, he sneered. When a man's life is one small child in a canvas bag, he has plenty of time to worry. You and I know how cruelly that judgment lands. Little Luna stood up from her chair by the glass. Pressing Milo tightly against her cheek, her young eyes filled. The room watched Finn, expecting the typical angry outburst that superficial people always want to see happen. Finn calmly crossed the floor. He knelt beside his daughter, speaking so softly that nobody else could hear a thing. Adults sometimes say unkind things, he told her, when they are afraid of losing something they want. You did nothing wrong. Did I get you fired? Luna asked him in a tiny, fragile voice. Did I make you lose your job? Serafina heard it. That question hit Serafina from across the room, piercing a truth she had long pretended simply did not exist. She herself had once sat in a grand hotel lobby as a child, hearing important men whisper that a poor girl like her should not disturb them. Finn just looked into Luna's eyes. You will never be the reason I lose anything good, he said. Several privileged candidates looked away. Even the human resources director shamefully lowered her eyes. Serafina announced a 5-minute recess. Her voice sounded cold, yet her face showed otherwise. Clinton finally realized that attacking the man's circumstances wouldn't be enough here. Now you and I reached the email round. Everyone got a fake inbox of 200 emails, having 15 minutes to pick the top 10 the chief executive needed to read. Flag hidden risks and draft urgent priority responses. Those messages came from board members, attorneys, eager investors, press contacts, and partner firms. Buried inside were dangerous forgeries and misleading attachments. Vague confirmation requests, along with the quiet signs of manipulation. Zane rushed right through. Judging strictly by sender titles, he blindly drafted crisp, standard corporate replies to them. Clinton watched him with deep satisfaction. Even Serafina openly acknowledged his speed. Finn worked carefully. He knew importance wasn't found in a fancy title. He studied subject lines, sent times, signatures, weird punctuation, time zones, and the chronological order of document versions. One arrogant candidate whispered that he was reading biz emails, like old love letters. Zane just smirked. Finn selected exactly 8 toy. Clinton attacked. The instruction was exactly 10. You didn't even bother to read the prompt. 8 messages actually need the chief executive's attention, Finn replied. The other 2 are traps meant to make her misread corporate priorities. Serafina leaned back. The supposedly unsuitable candidate walked everyone through his findings. The lead counsel's email had the right signature, but the writing style was entirely wrong. That specific lawyer always used long dashes when citing legal clauses. This fake version used basic parentheses. A message from Northbridge was sent at 7:13 in the morning Eastern Time, but the hidden file data showed a final edit at 7:20 Central Time. A document named Final Revision was actually an older file than one already marked Draft Reviewed. A media request pressured the chief executive to confirm a quoted statement that slipped in the phrase voluntary restructuring, words that could later be manipulated in a merger announcement as a formal endorsement. The room fell completely quiet. Finn pointed at the final email. It was a simple scheduling note claiming the afternoon contract meeting had been moved from the main boardroom to a small side room on the 39th floor. It perfectly mimicked normal administrative office traffic. But it came from general operations, rather than the chief executive's dedicated scheduling desk. And it lacked the required confirmation code from the cybersecurity team. If this were an actual working inbox, Finn noted, he would demand to know who pushed the chief executive to sign papers in a room missing standard security protocols. Clinton interrupted sharply. "You're just guessing again." Finn slowly turned his head. It was the first time the jobless father looked the corporate suit directly in the eye. "I am absolutely not guessing," he said. "I'm reading what someone prayed she would be far too busy to catch." The heavy silence lingered. "Here's where it gets real." Serafina asked what he'd do in his first 5 minutes. "Freeze every single new signing device," Finn answered. "Confirm the meeting room out loud with security, never by email. Call the lawyers on a private number outside the company directory. Track down exactly who saved the final version of every file. And never let a single person stand over her shoulder with a tablet while signing." That specific warning made Serafina glance over at Clinton for just a heartbeat. Clinton masked his reaction, but his fingers gripped the edge of his tablet tight. It was the absolute first moment of real doubt she had. Allowed to cross her face before someone who supposedly didn't belong in that boardroom. Clinton realized he couldn't let this struggling outsider near the next 72 hours of her schedule. After that email test, the final hiring choice fell into a razor-thin margin. The single dad was undeniably the sharpest mind in the whole room. Yet Serafina knew exactly how the wealthy, rigid corporate board would judge her. "What do you and I see? Talent. The board, just an unemployed dad with a kid, awkward laughs, and a cheap paper resume." To the old-school corporate executives who used to run this skyscraper from the top, choosing him would look like foolish charity. And a young female chief executive showing charity would just be dismissed as weakness. Clinton intercepted her in the glass hallway right outside the interview room. His tone was gentle, masking his bias as concern for the corporate institution. "Mr. Mercer was clever," he said. "He was not suitable." The board was already whispering that this young executive, Miss Vale, was too independent, too driven by feeling. Giving the job to a single father with a child would make them claim she hired on pure emotion, ignoring his actual merit. That accusation of emotion worked exactly like the trap he intended. Clinton offered a biased compromise: put Mr. Whitaker on a 72-hour trial, keep Mr. Mercer on a backup list. He wasn't fully excluded, just pushed aside because of his circumstances. Serafina, exhausted by the heavy judgment, surrendered. Finn took the unfair rejection quietly. His only focus was his little girl, Luna. She sensed the injustice immediately. "Is it because I came here?" she whispered. No," he said. "You didn't make me lose this opportunity. Adults sometimes need a little more time to see clearly. But they judged you. They judged because they cannot see my real worth. That does not diminish my value. You and I know real dignity." Serafina heard every single word spoken. She was completely used to candidates begging, people putting on a fake mask just to impress her. But she had never encountered a candidate quite like this. A man whose hardships never once compromised his love for his child. This wasn't just guilt creeping in. It was a heavy realization of their prejudice. Her bias was cracking, replaced by a sudden grounding clarity. Despite being unfairly dismissed, Finn ripped a page from his notebook, writing a warning. He quietly handed that folded message to Madison Cole, the office assistant. He politely asked her to pass the vital note along to Miss Vale. Later, in her private office, Serafina unfolded those 3 handwritten lines. "Do not sign any document in the relocated meeting room. Do not use any signing device delivered by Clinton. If Zane claims the new version is a procedural confirmation, call independent counsel first." Her executive pride instantly flared up. Let's pause here. A jobless, dismissed father was reading her corporate environment better than she ever could. Blinded by status, she ripped his paper in half, moving toward the trash. But intuition beat her prejudice. She opened her desk drawer, safely storing the pieces. The polished Zane began his trial. He seemed perfectly flawless. He remembered her coffee. He smoothly opened doors a step before she even reached them. He managed her inbox with incredibly neat speed. But appearances deceive. What she entirely missed was Zane syncing her calendar to another device. And Clinton had sneaked him a reserve signing tablet disguised to information technology as a routine backup. Outside, Finn walked away with his daughter as a gentle rain started falling. Luna pressed her toy to her cheek, asking if her father felt sad about losing. Finn stared up at the cold, judgmental glass of that tall corporate building. "I only hope," he said quietly, "that they read carefully before they finally sign." Real character always wins. By morning, Orion moved much faster than usual. Let's watch this massive Northbridge merger hit its final confirmation window. Clinton casually told Serafina the main executive boardroom had suffered a sudden presentation system failure. The internal corporate signing session was moving. He moved it to a side boardroom on the 39th floor. Polished Zane stood right beside her, holding a brand new tablet. He claimed her regular device failed to sync the newest version of the corporate agreement. But a memory troubled her mind, 3 handwritten lines left behind. Never use any signing device handed to you by Clinton. Yet Clinton smoothly promised that information technology had cleared the new hardware. Zane offered a perfect corporate smile, saying, "This version is only a procedural confirmation." That exact phrase made her freeze for a split second. It was the very warning the supposedly unsuitable father gave her. She stared at Zane. His smile looked so flawlessly professional it felt completely staged. Behind him, Clinton's voice sounded perfectly calm. "We are running 8 minutes late with Northbridge," he stated. "The board is waiting." The executive pressure suddenly intensified. You and I might ask, could a CEO halt a deal because an unsuitable single dad wrote a cryptic warning? She convinced herself she was letting this stranger's strange calmness infect her own professional judgment. She accepted the sleek tablet. Right then, Finn was driving his daughter Luna towards school. Just outside the gate, Luna unzipped her little backpack and let out a sudden sharp gasp. Her toy Milo was missing. That white rabbit, the final gift her late mother ever gave her, was simply gone. A polished executive sees a toy, but to Luna that rabbit held her entire world. Finn immediately spun his car around. Back at the grand lobby, reception informed the dad with cold, practiced regret. He no longer had any access to the high-level hiring floor. Clinton ordered that unemployed job candidates stay completely out of the premium executive spaces today. Luna gripped Finn's worn shirt just as Madison Cole walked across the lobby. She had noticed the morning's unusual changes. That sudden boardroom swap made her feel anxious without entirely understanding why. She instantly recognized Finn. Hearing that a single dad's little girl lost her precious rabbit near the 31st floor waiting area, her heart softened. Looking past his circumstances, she quietly sneaked them upstairs, strictly to the waiting zone. At the security desk, the father's sharp eye scanned the internal corporate scheduling screen. He noticed the CEO's critical signing location had shifted twice in just 20 minutes. A completely new device was suddenly linked to her private signing account. That identifier didn't match a single fixed piece of hardware assigned to the executive leadership office. He stopped. His outer expression remained perfectly unchanged. But behind those eyes, true brilliance snapped into sharp focus. Madison saw it instantly, like a nurse catching a shifting heartbeat before the monitor ever beeps. "What is it?" she whispered nervously. "Which exact device is she holding right now?" Finn answered. Madison's face went pale. "You and I see it now." He completely understood their deceitful pattern. The executives weren't going to use physical force to make her sign. Let's watch how these elite executives manufactured pure pressure. Room change, device change, delayed clock, waiting shareholders, a slick assistant whispering in her ear, and a file marked as procedure. Once her pen hit the paper, a hidden trapdoor would instantly strip away her voting power. If she signs in the next 3 minutes, Finn said, they will not need to fire her. They will have made her sign herself out of the company. Madison tried buzzing the boardroom. They had completely blocked all outside calls. Finn spun toward the fancy executive elevator. It needed a VIP badge he lacked. He bolted for the stairs. Little Luna grabbed his hand. "Where are you going?" He dropped down. "I have to fix something, sweetheart." "Stay right here with Ms. Madison. Milo can wait with you." "Will those people laugh at you again?" she asked. Finn looked right into her eyes. "Maybe," he replied. "But laughter is not as dangerous as letting bad people win." He sprinted. Up on floor 39, the boardroom held a heavy, arrogant silence. Serafina sat alone at the head of that massive table. Elite board members and pricey senior counsel flanked her on both sides. Clinton hovered over her right shoulder. Zane stood left, gripping a tablet in both hands. The big wall screen displayed a document titled Final Procedural Confirmation. Zane slid the tablet gently before her. "This version is only a procedural confirmation," he repeated smoothly. That specific phrase struck her memory like a warning bell. The ripped note. The struggling single dad who left yesterday without a trace of bitterness. The exact warning he dropped during that harsh calendar round. Bad decisions happen in hallways. Not boardrooms. She suddenly paused. Clinton leaned in a tiny bit closer. "Serafina," he whispered. "We cannot keep Northbridge waiting. This is just procedure." An older, totally distracted board member nodded along. "Sign," he urged. "We read the summary." She raised the stylus, then the heavy door slammed open. Finn stood there, gasping from the stairs. His cheap shirt was wrinkled, but his fierce posture forced every executive in that room to look twice. One wealth director vaguely remembered him from the previous day. Clinton's polished face flushed bright red. "Call security," he barked loudly, his charming mask completely gone. "He has absolutely no business on this floor." Zane panicked. "He is not authorized. This is a security breach." Serafina stared at the single dad. "What are you doing here?" "Stopping you from signing your entire company away," he replied. Those bold words shattered the quiet. Clinton laughed cruelly, mocking Finn as some bitter reject. "You and I know better." Zane attacked his circumstances, sneering that any man bringing a kid to a corporate interview was clearly unstable. An elite board member shouted for guards to throw him out. Finn didn't argue with the suits. He looked only at her. "3 minutes," the outsider said. "If I'm wrong, I'll walk right out and you can call the cops yourself." The polished executive objected too loudly. "This is a privileged document," Clinton snapped. "This outsider has no right to examine it." That corporate panic was exactly what made her pause. You have to ask yourself, why would 3 mere minutes terrify an executive? Serafina lowered her stylus. 3 minutes. The elite executive's face visibly paled. Zane gulped. The underestimated father didn't touch the document. He calmly asked her to open the version history herself, and she did. The creation timestamp completely mismatched the legal department's final transmission. Next, he instructed her to check the signing tablet's device metadata. That particular identifier didn't belong to any machine in the CEO's office. He simply asked her to check the last editing credential. Clinton's elite operations account popped up. The boardroom started buzzing. Clinton defended himself. "I approve logistics. That is normal." Approving logistics, the single dad replied, "does not generate a voting annex." Serafina whipped her head back to the screen. The unlikely hero pointed at a tiny embedded link inside the file. It was cold corporate jargon, a hidden annex buried underneath a routine restructuring confirmation clause. He broke it down into plain English. If she signed it, her signature would be used to confirm her consent for a temporary transfer of voting authority during an emergency corporate restructuring. And the sole recipient of that stolen authority would be the Operations Committee. The head of that very committee was Clinton Rusk. You can imagine the heavy silence in that boardroom. Zane tried one last excuse. "That's an extreme interpretation," the corporate assistant said. "Then call independent counsel," the outsider replied. "Dial a number from completely outside the internal directory." Serafina completely ignored her polished assistant. "Call," she demanded, but Zane stood completely frozen. In that stillness, watching the supposed professional fail the most basic verification step, she finally understood. The spotless, corporate-approved assistant she had carefully selected, out of pure vanity, was actually the weakest link here. Serafina grabbed her personal phone and pulled up a trusted contact older than her entire company. Then she dialed her independent attorney directly. Her lawyer listened for under a minute before stopping her. "You and I have both heard that tone, someone who's seen this exact corporate trap." He told her to freeze absolutely everything until he arrived. The annex the single dad spotted could, he confirmed, trigger a massive transfer of voting power using just an electronic signature and today's board minutes. The entire boardroom fractured. A furious shareholder demanded to know who slipped in the annexed file. Another director forcefully pressed Clinton for real answers. The so-called executive kept his voice steady, blaming a simple routing error from the legal team. Meanwhile, the outsider calmly laid out 3 more observations. The corporate boardroom was quietly moved up to floor 39, just to bypass the standard corporate security setup. "Look closely with me. Zane's signing device never actually belonged to the CEO. Clinton's own operations account built it, linking the permissions just 18 minutes before the meeting started." Through her phone, Serafina ordered the tech department to immediately lock Clinton's account. For the first time ever, the wealthy executive completely lost his perfect polish. He snapped that she was too young and far too proud, claiming the board had lost all faith in her. Northbridge would stabilize the startup while she clung to power out of pure emotion. That word, sentiment, hit her exactly where he meant it to. But this time she firmly held her ground. She stared back with a calm control he completely underestimated. "You were almost right about one thing," she told him. "I truly hate being called emotional. That is why I nearly backed a traitor instead of the struggling father who told me the truth." Zane frantically tried to distance himself from the mess. "He was just following standard onboarding protocol," he fired back. "Nothing more," but Finn blocked that excuse right away. "If it was really just onboarding," Finn challenged, "why did you use a phrase meant strictly for procedural confirmation?" Zane just stood there, totally lost for words. His polished corporate mask completely shattered. He admitted, in short, nervous sentences, that Clinton promised him chief of staff after Northbridge took control. He claimed he thought it was standard internal politics, not an illegal corporate coup. That confession, heard by the board and legal counsel over the phone, left Clinton completely ruined. Serafina ordered security to march Clinton right out. She froze the merger, sealed the boardroom, and ordered every single system log saved immediately. No screaming, no physical fight at all. Clinton's downfall came from data, read by the very man they underestimated. A struggling father you and I know this entire room mocked yesterday. Once Clinton was gone, Serafina turned to Finn, and the entire room followed her gaze. One wealthy shareholder who insulted his shabby clothes yesterday nervously cleared his throat. "Mr. Mercer," the nervous shareholder began, "may I ask where exactly you worked before coming here?" Finn paused for a beat. "In places," he answered, "where you learn that massive mistakes always hide inside tiny tasks." He dropped no fancy company name because real experience speaks for itself. Serafina called him into her private office later. No board, no Clinton, no one laughing. Just the heavy silence of a powerful executive realizing she nearly lost everything. Think about it. She nearly lost everything judging his current circumstances. Finn walked inside but stayed standing, looking right through the glass wall. Outside, Luna sat holding Milo tightly against her shoulder, with Madison resting right beside them. "Let's look closely here." Serafina finally looked past appearances and stopped seeing an inconvenience. She saw a little girl who had waited in a cold room of suits, forced to hear executives mock her unemployed single father. "I owe you an apology," Serafina stated. "The person you owe first," Finn said, "is not me." She understood completely. A typical CEO might just formally apologize to him for a hiring error. But proving true worth goes beyond simple words. She walked out to the lobby. Madison stood. Serafina waved her down, kneeling right in front of Luna. This powerful executive in a pristine cream dress sank down to the eye level of a 6-year-old clutching a stuffed rabbit tight. "Earlier today," Serafina softly began, "I judged your dad and said something cruel. I am sorry." Luna stared at her quietly. "Do you still think my dad is not good enough?" "No," Serafina replied. "I think your father is the finest person in this entire building." "Then why did you let those people mock him?" The child exposed the truth. Finn stepped forward to intervene. But Serafina gently raised a hand, signaling that she would handle it. Because I was scared of looking foolish in front of my peers, she confessed. And when adults get scared, they sometimes let good people get hurt. That was my mistake. Luna stayed silent. Then she placed her rabbit down, seemingly having made up her young mind. My dad never wants to make anybody feel ashamed, she said. Serafina watched Finn. We know no corporate resume could ever capture his true value better. Back in her office, Serafina slid a fresh contract right across the desk. This is no trial position. Executive assistant to the CEO, reporting directly to her without any corporate middlemen. Full authority to halt any questionable signing process he flagged as risky. Plus schedule protections that specifically named his little girl as a core priority. He read every word slowly. The generous salary meant nothing. He studied the childcare protocols and the strict confidentiality terms, the rules for pausing operations and the emergency hour limits. She watched, realizing this man completely understood his high worth and his hard circumstances. Neither compromised the other. I want you working right beside me, she said. I refuse to ever let anyone here use my daughter to make me seem less capable, he stated. Starting right now, she firmly replied. Anyone who tries will lose their job here. He studied her a second longer. He needed to see if she meant it or if it was pity. She held his gaze. She opened her drawer, pulling out his torn paper note. It had been carefully taped back together with clear tape. She handed it over. I ripped this because of foolish pride, she admitted. I saved it because deep down I knew you were right about true value. He took the note, looking closely at the tape across the wrinkled paper. We can see this was the perfect image of what just started between them. Imperfect, torn but rejoined by something much stronger than corporate pride, he signed. Look, there was no embrace, no rushed romance, just a firm handshake. But she held his hand a breath longer than corporate formality demanded. Finn certainly noticed, she did too. Neither said a single word about it. 3 months went by. The Orion workplace completely transformed. Clinton faced formal investigation. Zane permanently left the executive assistant profession right after his. Testimony entered into the official legal record. The Northbridge merger got pulled, then smartly restructured in Orion's favor. Serafina totally rebuilt the operations division, running every security device through an independent review system. You and I know Finn became her true executive assistant. Nothing got flashy. He still rocked a crisp white shirt, navy trousers, and polished brown shoes. But the reaction of everyone around him had shifted entirely. In those corporate hallways, staff stepped aside out of genuine respect, never fear. Her corner office had changed too. By the window, a tall, vibrant green plant now stood proudly. It arrived quietly just a few weeks after Finn's very first day. Visiting the workplace after school, little Luna had mentioned, the office looked beautiful, but it desperately needed some kind of living thing inside it. Serafina never bothered explaining the plant to anybody. Now, whenever Luna stopped by after school, she checked the soil with the absolute seriousness of a small inspector. During the annual shareholders meeting, a senior board member asked Miss Vale to explain giving strategic access to a single father with zero track record at major firms. You and I recognize this instantly, the same cruel morning mockery disguised in formal clothes. Serafina didn't back down. She stared across the room because, she stated, while everyone with a flawless resume was busy reading titles, he was reading the absolute truth. This company nearly lost everything because we foolishly mistook superficial appearance for capability. Finn stood exactly one step behind her, holding the proper position of an executive assistant. But that single step wasn't about distance anymore. It was pure, unshakable trust. Following the meeting, Luna skipped into the office holding a brand new drawing. It pictured a tall glass corporate tower, a man in a white shirt, a tiny girl hugging a rabbit, and a woman with flowing brown hair wearing a cream dress. Right beside that giant tower stood a massive tree. Hanging on its branches, Luna had sketched 3 bright red apples. What are those 3 apples for? Serafina asked gently. One for my dad, Luna smiled, one for me and one for you. Serafina stayed totally silent. To her, this wasn't just some child's drawing. It was a rare invitation into a life she had spent her entire existence not knowing how to enter. A small, beautifully imperfect, warm family. Finn watched quietly from the doorway. He didn't break into a huge smile. The corner of his mouth just shifted up a fraction. We all see it. For him, that was already a heavy door swinging open. Later that day, as the corporate tower finally emptied out, Finn grabbed his humble gray cloth bag. Luna held his hand tight while Milo sat safely tucked under his arm. Serafina stepped out of her office, deliberately slowing her pace to walk beside them. Proof that a person's circumstance doesn't dictate their worth. The elevator chimed open. All three of them stepped inside. The doors slid shut on the CEO gazing down at the small girl. The small girl looking right back up at the executive, with Finn standing quietly right beside them. Think about it. The single dad mocked for bringing his kid to an interview. He was now the very last person to leave the executive floor with the CEO. Not as someone needing pity, not because a struggling father just got lucky, but by proving that outward appearance never defines true capability. Quiet, steady kindness and unbroken dignity can absolutely save an empire.